My wife banned me from the family table in front of everyone. This day is for my mother, not for you to embarrass this family. I quietly packed my bags and left. 1 week later, my son collapsed. The hospital bill revealed my insurance was canceled. Then my bank sent an alert I never authorized. My name is Ryan Collins. I'm 47 years old, and I work as a training and development manager for Apex Solutions in Seattle. My job is teaching people to grow, to improve, to reach their potential. That faith in human nature made me good at my work. It also made me blind at home. It was a Friday evening in late September when everything shattered. Melissa had texted that morning saying we needed to talk. The message sat heavy in my stomach all day. I stopped at the store on my way home. Salmon, asparagus, wild rice. Her favorite Pinot Grigio. White roses she'd mentioned loving months ago. I was trying to close whatever distance had opened between us. The house was too quiet when I walked in. Melissa sat at the kitchen table, laptop open, but screen dark. Brandon stood near the refrigerator, arms crossed, looking at me like I was a stranger. "Hey," I said, setting grocery bags on the counter. "I got everything for dinner. Thought we could." "We need to talk," Melissa said, cutting me off. I turned to face her. "Okay, what's going on?" She glanced at Brandon, then back at me. "Sunday. The whole family is gathering at my mother's house." Relief washed over me for half a second. "Okay, what time?" "You won't be sitting at the table," Melissa said. The words hung in the air. I blinked. "What?" Brandon shifted, jaw tight. "Mom's right, Dad. You always make things awkward." I stared at my son. This 17-year-old kid I'd raised, coached in Little League, taught to ride a bike. The kid who now looked at me with contempt. "I don't understand," I said slowly. Melissa stood, smoothing her blouse. "This day is for my mother, not for you to embarrass this family. You ask too many questions. You notice things. You make people uncomfortable." My throat tightened. "Uncomfortable about what?" "This isn't a negotiation, Ryan," Melissa said, her tone cold and final. "The decision is made." I looked between them, waiting for someone to break, to laugh. Neither did. "So, where am I supposed to be while my family has dinner?" "That's up to you," Melissa replied. "Just not there." Brandon pulled out his phone, pointedly ignoring me, as if I'd already disappeared. Something broke inside my chest. I'd spent 17 years teaching my son about integrity, about respect, and here he was, watching his mother exclude me from our family, saying nothing in my defense. My phone buzzed. A text from Dorothy. "Don't come Sunday. Seating is arranged." I read it twice. The woman whose medical bills I'd quietly paid, whose business I'd advised for free, had just uninvited me via text. "You already talked to your mother," I said. "Of course I did," Melissa replied. "Of course." This wasn't a conversation. It was an announcement. They'd already decided, already coordinated, already erased me. I looked at the grocery bags. The salmon, the flowers, the wine, all of it suddenly pathetic. "I see," I said quietly. Melissa's expression flickered. "Ryan, don't make this dramatic. You just told me I can't sit with my own family. And I'm being dramatic?" "You're twisting this," Brandon said, voice rising. "Mom's trying to protect Grandma. You always make everything about you." I stared at him. When did I ever make anything about me? He didn't answer, just looked away. The silence stretched out, suffocating. I could feel years of trust turning to ash. "All right," I said finally. "If that's how it is." I walked past them to our bedroom. Melissa called after me, but I didn't stop. I pulled my suitcase from the closet and packed methodically. Clothes, toiletries, laptop, important documents. Melissa appeared in the doorway. "What are you doing?" "Leaving," I said simply. "You're being ridiculous." I zipped the suitcase and faced her. "You told me I don't belong at the family table." "I'm just agreeing with you." "I didn't say you don't belong." "Yes, you did," I interrupted. "Maybe not in those exact words, but that's what you said." Her face paled. "Ryan, please. Let's talk tomorrow." "Tomorrow I won't be here to talk." I walked past her, past Brandon who'd frozen in the hallway, past the kitchen with its unused groceries. At the door I paused. 19 years, I said quietly. I thought that meant something. I walked out into the September evening, got into my car, and drove away from the only home I'd known for nearly 2 decades. I didn't know it then, but that was the moment everything changed. 1 week later, my phone would ring with a call that would reveal just how deep the betrayal went. The studio apartment smelled like cleaning solution and regret. I dropped my suitcase by the door and stood there in the silence, listening to nothing. No footsteps above. No television through walls. Just the hum of the refrigerator and distant traffic. I found the place online, booked it for a week. Month to month after that if needed. The thought of needing it longer made my chest tight. I sat on the edge of the bed without turning on lights. The city outside kept moving. Cars at red lights. Someone laughing on the sidewalk. Normal things. Cruel in their normality. I should have been angry. Instead, I felt grief. Grief for the marriage I thought I had. For the man I'd been inside it. I replayed the kitchen scene over and over. The grocery bag cutting into my fingers. Melissa's casual tone. Brandon's cold eyes. You won't be sitting at the table. As if the table were a privilege instead of something I'd earned by showing up for 17 years. My phone buzzed. Melissa. I stared at the screen. We should talk tomorrow. Please don't make this worse. Make this worse. Worse than being told I didn't belong. I set the phone face down and showered, letting water run longer than necessary. It didn't wash away the tightness in my chest. Sleep came in pieces. I woke before dawn, heart racing, convinced I'd forgotten something important. In a way, I had. I'd forgotten how much of my life ran on trust. I was pouring coffee when my phone vibrated. Bank alert. A new device has accessed your account. I frowned. I hadn't logged in anywhere new. I opened the app. Everything looked normal at first. Balances unchanged. No obvious withdrawals. Then I noticed a pending authorization. Small, almost polite. A test amount. Tracy Consulting LLC. Authorization hold. $1.47. My finger hovered over the screen. Who the hell is Tracy? I checked recent logins. One unfamiliar device. Approved 2 days ago. Tuesday afternoon at 2:43 p.m. I've been in a conference room then, headphones on, arguing with a vendor about training schedules. I sat down slowly, coffee untouched. A memory surfaced. Dorothy in our living room last week, holding my phone. Oh, honey, your banking app is so modern. Mine confuses me. Melissa had laughed. Help my mom, Ryan. She doesn't understand these things. I had helped. Stood next to them, pointed at the screen, explained features. Approved something without thinking, because why would I? Family. I closed my eyes and breathed through my nose. I called the bank's fraud department. The woman was calm, professional. Yes, Mr. Collins, she said after a pause. There does appear to be an attempt to establish a new payee. It hasn't completed. From which device? I can't provide identifying details over the phone, but I can confirm it was authorized from your account. Authorized? The word landed heavy. My consent. Can I stop it? Yes. I recommend freezing your credit, changing passwords, and logging out of all devices immediately. I did all of it. Every click felt surgical. Necessary. Cold. When I finished, I sat staring at the confirmation screen. My phone buzzed again. Melissa. I let it ring. She tried again. On the third call, I answered. Ryan. Thank God. She said, breathless. Where are you? I'm fine. Why are you calling? I asked. Pause. Not long, but long enough. Did you do something with the bank? She asked. I closed my eyes. Why would you ask me that? My mother's upset. She got a call. Something about an internal review. My stomach dropped. Who is Tracy? I asked. Silence stretched thin. She helps my mom with finances, Melissa said finally. It's not what you think. What do I think? She stopped, swallowed. That we were trying to hurt you. I leaned against the counter. You removed me from the table, so I wouldn't ask questions. And now my name is attached to something I didn't approve. Ryan, please, she said. It was temporary. A bridge. My mom just needed. A voice cut in. Female, younger, confident. Tell him to calm down. It was just a test. He won't even notice. My blood went cold. Tracy, stop, Melissa gasped. The line went silent. Melissa came back, voice shaking. You weren't supposed to hear that. I stared out the window. A man walked his dog. Morning unfolding without me. I did, I said. And now I know this isn't about Sunday. What are you doing? She whispered. Protecting myself, I replied. Something you should have done. She started crying. Real tears. You're tearing the family apart. No, I said. You did that when you decided I was an embarrassment instead of a husband. I ended the call. I spent the rest of the morning documenting. Screenshots. Dates. Times. I created a folder on my laptop and named it simply Proof. There was no satisfaction in it. Only clarity. 1 week later, my phone rang at 2 in the morning. I've been sleeping poorly since leaving, so I was already half awake when the screen lit up the dark studio. Melissa's name flashed across it. I almost didn't answer. But 17 years of marriage built reflexes that logic couldn't override. What? I said, my voice rough. It's Brandon, she said, and her voice was pure panic. We're at Seattle General. Emergency room. You need to come now. My heart stopped. What happened? He collapsed at home. He was complaining about stomach pain all evening. Then he just, Ryan, please. Just come. I was already pulling on jeans. I'm on my way. The drive took 12 minutes. I parked illegally and ran through the automatic doors. Melissa stood in the waiting area, her face blotchy from crying. Behind her stood Dorothy, and next to Dorothy was a woman I didn't recognize. Younger, professional-looking, watching me with calculating eyes. Where is he? I demanded. They took him back for tests, Melissa said. They think it's his appendix. They might need to operate. I moved toward the registration desk. I need to see my son. The nurse looked at her computer. Are you the father? Yes. Ryan Collins. She typed something, frowned. I'm sorry, sir. I'm showing that the insurance on file has been terminated. The words didn't make sense at first. What? The policy was canceled 4 days ago. We'll need alternative payment arrangements before we can proceed with treatment. I turned to Melissa. What did you do? Her face went white. I can explain. You canceled his health insurance? My voice came out harder than I intended. Our son's health insurance. Dorothy stepped forward. We were switching to a better plan. We just hadn't finalized. A better plan, I repeated. While he's in the emergency room with a medical crisis. The woman next to Dorothy spoke up. I'm Tracy Richardson. I'm a consultant helping the family with financial restructuring. This is just a temporary gap in coverage. I don't care who you are, I said, cutting her off. I turned back to the nurse. What's the estimated cost? She glanced at her screen. Emergency appendectomy, if that's what's needed, runs between $45,000 and $50,000 without insurance. The number hung in the air like smoke. I looked at Melissa. You did this. You canceled his coverage, and now he's lying back there in pain while they figure out how to pay for it. Ryan, please, she whispered. We can fix this. No, I said. You fix this. You and your mother and your consultant. You wanted to cut me out of the family? Fine. Handle your family emergency without me. Melissa grabbed my arm. You can't be serious. He's your son. I pulled away from her. He stood in our kitchen a week ago and watched you humiliate me. He told me I make everything about myself. So let him see what it looks like when I actually do. I turned to the nurse. I'm not authorizing payment. Whatever insurance was on file, that's between them and the hospital. Ryan. Melissa's voice broke into a sob. I walked toward the exit. Dorothy moved to block my path. You're being cruel, she hissed. I looked down at her. This 70-year-old woman who'd helped orchestrate my removal from Sunday dinner, who'd taken my phone under false pretenses, who tried to access my accounts. No, I said quietly. I'm being clear about boundaries. You all made it very clear I'm not part of this family anymore. So stop asking me to act like I am. I walked past her into the night. My hands shook as I got back in my car. I sat there for a moment, engine off, breathing hard. I wasn't heartless. I love Brandon, but he needed to learn that choices have consequences, that excluding someone has costs, that you can't erase a person when it's convenient and summon them back when it's necessary. My phone buzzed. Melissa, please. I'm begging you. I typed back. You have insurance through your job. Use it. Or ask Tracy the consultant for her expert financial advice. I started the car and drove back to the studio. Inside, I pulled out my laptop and did what I should have done days ago. I started digging. Bank records, credit reports, transaction histories. If they'd gone after my insurance and my accounts, what else had they touched? By dawn, I had my answer, and it was worse than I'd imagined. The coffee had gone cold, but I kept drinking it anyway. I'd been staring at my laptop screen for 3 hours, and what I found made my stomach turn. I'd hired a forensic accountant named Bill Stevens 2 days after the hospital incident. Cost me $1,500 for a preliminary audit, but it was worth every penny. Now I sat in his office in downtown Seattle, listening to him explain how thoroughly I'd been robbed. Mr. Collins, Bill said, sliding a printed report across his desk. Over the past 8 years, approximately $412,000 has been moved out of your joint and personal accounts. The number hit me like a fist. 400,000. Give or take, he said. Small amounts at first. 1,000 here, 1,500 there. Categorized as gifts, loans to family, home repairs for your mother-in-law's residence. Over time, the amounts increased. More recently, there were several transfers to an LLC registered in Delaware. What LLC? He pulled up a document on his screen. Collins Family Trust LLC. Registered 6 months ago. Your wife is listed as managing member. Your name appears as a principal, but I'm guessing you didn't know about it. I didn't sign anything, I said. Your signature appears on the formation documents. He turned the screen toward me. I stared at the scanned paperwork. That was my signature, but I had no memory of signing it. When was this dated? March 15th. Does that ring a bell? I closed my eyes, thinking back. March. Brandon's birthday. We'd had dinner at Dorothy's house. Melissa had asked me to sign some insurance updates while we were there. I've been talking to Brandon, half paying attention, scrawled my name on 3 or 4 pages without reading them. They did this at a family dinner, I said quietly. Bill nodded. It's common in financial abuse cases. Catch the target when they're distracted, relaxed, trusting. Get the signatures when their guard is down. Financial abuse. There was that phrase again. What was the LLC used for? I asked. Funneling money, Bill said bluntly. Your wife would transfer funds from your joint account to the LLC, categorize it as an investment or business expense, then the LLC would make payments to various recipients. Your mother-in-law's business. Tracy Richardson's consulting company. Several cash withdrawals. Tracy Richardson. The consultant. Not exactly, Bill said. He pulled up another document. Tracy Richardson is actually Trace Richardson. Male, 43 years old. He attended the University of Washington same years as your wife. I found photos of them together from that period. My blood went cold. He's not a financial consultant. He has an LLC registered for consulting services, but there's no evidence of any actual business. No clients besides your family. No revenue beyond what came from your accounts. He's her boyfriend, I said. Bill's expression was carefully neutral. I can't prove that, but the pattern suggests a close personal relationship that predates his involvement in your family's finances. I sat back in my chair, the pieces falling into place. The exclusion from Sunday dinner. The canceled insurance. The unauthorized banking access. None of it was about protecting Dorothy's feelings or avoiding my questions. It was about hiding what they were doing with my money. With him. There's more, Bill said. I found evidence they attempted to list you as a co-signer on a business loan application for your mother-in-law. The application was submitted, but not yet processed. If it had gone through, you would have been liable for approximately $200,000 in business debt. Can they do that without my consent? Not legally. But if they have documents with your signature, they can try. The bank would have caught it eventually, but by then the damage might have been done. I thought about Brandon in that hospital bed. About how quickly Melissa had panicked when I froze my credit and locked down my accounts. About Dorothy's text. This is all a misunderstanding. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a plan, and I'd almost funded it until it was too late. What do? I asked. Bill leaned forward. You file a police report for identity theft and fraud. You notify the IRS about the LLC, since you likely didn't report any of this income or know about its existence. You get a lawyer and start divorce proceedings with a forensic accountant attached. And you protect everything else they haven't touched yet. Will I get the money back? Some of it, maybe, if your wife has assets, if the LLC has funds. But realistically, you're looking at a long legal battle and partial recovery at best. For $100,000. 8 years. My entire adult life with Melissa. I've been teaching other people how to improve themselves while my own family had been systematically robbing me blind. Do it, I said. All of it. Police report, IRS notification, everything. Bill nodded. I'll have the documentation ready by tomorrow. I stood to leave, then paused. One more thing. My son's in the hospital. They canceled his insurance. Is there anything I can do about that? Bill's expression softened. If he's 17, he's still a minor. You have parental rights and obligations regardless of your marital situation. You can add him back to your insurance independently. Even if his mother objects. She can object all she wants. He's your child. I nodded. Then do that too. I left Bill's office and sat in my car for a long time, hands on the wheel. Then I called the hospital and arranged for Brandon to be added back to my insurance policy. Not because Melissa had begged. Not because Dorothy had guilted me. Because he was my son, and what they'd done to him wasn't his fault. Not yet, anyway. But he was going to learn the truth. All of it. The coffee shop was deliberately public. Witnesses everywhere, even if none of them were paying attention. I'd chosen it carefully. Neutral ground. No scenes. Just facts. Melissa arrived 10 minutes late, looking like she hadn't slept in days. Good. She sat across from me, hands wrapped around a cup she didn't drink from. Thank you for meeting me, she said quietly. I didn't respond. Just waited. My mother is terrified, Melissa continued. She thinks she's being investigated by the bank. Brandon won't speak to me since the hospital, and you've frozen everything. I protected my assets, I said. That's not the same as freezing everything. She leaned forward. Ryan, this has gotten out of control. No, I replied. It already was out of control. I just didn't feel it until now. Her eyes flickered around the room, checking who might be listening. Can we talk about this without lawyers? Please. Without lawyers. Without records. Without witnesses. The same way they'd operated for 8 years. We can talk, I said. But I'm recording this. I placed my phone on the table between us, screen up. Legally. Openly. So there's no confusion later. Her face went pale. Why? Because facts matter. And memories change when consequences show up. She swallowed hard, then nodded. Okay. What do you want to know? Tell me about Trace Richardson. Melissa's hands tightened around her cup. He's helping my mother with her business. Try again. The truth this time. She closed her eyes. We dated in college. Before I met you. When my mom's import business started failing last year, she reached out to him. He said he could help restructure things. And you believed him. He has an MBA from. He has an LLC with no clients and no revenue. I interrupted. What he has is access to my money. Melissa flinched. It wasn't supposed to go this far. How far was it supposed to go? I asked. The $400,000 Bill Stevens found? Was that the plan? Or were you aiming higher? Her face crumpled. I didn't know it was that much. You didn't know? I repeated slowly. You've been transferring money for 8 years, and you didn't know how much. Trey said it was just temporary assistance. Small amounts to help my mom until her business recovered. Her business that closed 3 years ago. Melissa looked down at the table. The LLC in Delaware, I continued. The one with my forged signature. Whose idea was that? She didn't answer. Melissa. Whose idea? Trace's, she whispered. He said it would help with tax efficiency. You were supposed to benefit too. By being listed on documents I never saw. By being tied to debts I never agreed to. I thought you'd understand if you knew the full picture, she said desperately. My mother built her whole life around that business. When it started failing, she was going to lose everything. So you decided to lose mine instead. Her breath hitched. That's not fair. What's not fair, I said, keeping my voice level, is excluding me from family dinners so I wouldn't notice you were robbing me. What's not fair is using our son as a weapon. What's not fair is canceling his insurance during a medical emergency. I didn't cancel it, Melissa protested. Trace said there'd be overlap between policies. Trace, I cut her off, is a con artist who saw an opportunity. And you gave him one because you were more loyal to your mother than to your husband. She started crying then. Real tears, not the control kind. I never meant to hurt you, she sobbed. But you did, I said quietly. Every time you chose them over me. Every time you let Brandon disrespect me without consequence. Every time you transferred money you knew I hadn't approved. My phone buzzed on the table. A text from Bill Stevens. Police report filed. IRS notification sent. You're official. I picked up the phone and ended the recording. What happens now? Melissa asked, her voice small. Now, I said, standing, you deal with the consequences. The bank investigation. The IRS inquiry. The divorce proceedings that start Monday. Divorce. She looked up shocked. Ryan, please. You removed me from the table, remember? You told me I embarrassed the family. I'm just making it official. I turned to leave, then stopped. One more thing. Tell Trace that if he contacts me, my attorney, or tries to access anything with my name on it again, I'm pressing criminal charges. Not civil. Criminal. I walked out into the Seattle afternoon, leaving her sitting there with her cold coffee and collapsing lies. Behind me, she called my name once. I didn't turn around. Sunday came whether I wanted it to or not. I'd spent the week documenting everything. Bill Stevens had been thorough. Police report filed. IRS notified about the LLC. Credit frozen. Divorce attorney retained. Every protective measure in place. I hadn't planned to go to Dorothy's house. The invitation had been rescinded, after all. But Saturday night, I'd received a text from an unknown number. If you don't come tomorrow, this gets worse for everyone. We need to talk. Trace. A threat wrapped in politeness. The kind of manipulation I'd seen 100 times in corporate training scenarios. Create urgency. Imply consequences. Force compliance. Except I'd written the training modules on resisting manipulation. So Sunday afternoon, I drove to Dorothy's house in Bellevue. The same house where I'd spent countless family dinners. Where I'd helped with repairs, advice, financial support. Where I'd been told I wasn't welcome. Cars filled the driveway. The whole family, just like Melissa had said. I parked on the street and walked through the gate. The backyard was set up exactly as I'd imagined. Long table. Place settings. No car with my name. Conversations stopped as I appeared. Melissa's sister froze mid-sentence. Dorothy's face went rigid. Brandon stood near the grill, anger flashing across his features. Then Melissa stepped forward. Ryan, what are you doing here? I was invited, I said calmly. By Trace. A man detached himself from the group near the house. Mid-40s, expensive casual clothes, confident stride. Trace Richardson in person. Mr. Collins, he said, extending his hand. I'm glad you came. I didn't shake. You said we needed to talk. His smile tightened. Perhaps somewhere more private. No, I said. Right here is fine. I pulled a folder from my bag and set on the table. The sound was small. The effect wasn't. What is that? Dorothy demanded. Documentation, I said, of everything done in my name over the past 8 years. I opened the folder. Bank statements. Transaction records. The LLC formation documents. IRS notification letters. $412,000, I said clearly. Removed from my accounts. Funneled through a company I didn't create. To pay for a business that doesn't exist and a consultant with no credentials. Trace's expression hardened. You're misunderstanding the situation. Am I? I pulled out another document. This is a loan application for $190,000. My name is co-signer. My signature forged. Sound familiar? Melissa grabbed the edge of the table. Ryan, please. Not here. Not here. I looked around at the assembled family. Where should we discuss it? At another table I'm not allowed to sit at. Brandon stepped forward. Dad, you're embarrassing everyone. No, I said, turning to him. I'm telling the truth. There's a difference. Dorothy's voice rose. This is family business. This is identity theft, I corrected, and fraud, and financial abuse. The bank has already opened an investigation. The IRS has been notified, and tomorrow, criminal charges will be filed unless certain conditions are met. The backyard went silent. Trace recovered first. Look, this could all go away if you just release the credit freeze. We can work this out quietly. Quietly, I repeated. Like you worked out using my accounts? Like you worked out forging my signature? Like you worked out canceling my son's insurance during a medical emergency? Melissa's sister spoke up. Insurance? What are you talking about? I turned to her. Ask Melissa. Ask why Brandon ended up in the emergency room with a $45,000 bill because his coverage had been terminated. The family erupted in overlapping voices. Someone swore. Melissa started crying. Dorothy tried to speak over everyone. Through it all, I stood quietly, watching the structure collapse. Finally, Dorothy's voice cut through. What do you want, Ryan? I met her eyes. I want my name removed from everything you've attached it to. I want written confirmation that no one here will use my identity, my credit, or my access again. Ever. And if we do that, Trace asked carefully, then I pursue civil remedies only. No criminal charges. No public scandal. Just divorce and financial separation. Melissa looked up, mascara streaking her face. You're really doing this. You did this, I said, when you chose your mother over our marriage. When you let Trace back into your life. When you decided I was an embarrassment instead of a partner. I closed the folder and picked it up. You have until tomorrow at 5 p.m. to provide the documentation. After that, everything goes to the prosecutor. I turned and walked toward the gate. Behind me, the silence felt heavy. Final. At the street, I looked back once. They stood scattered across the yard. The family I tried to belong to. The table I'd been removed from. Brandon watched me from near the grill. For just a moment, something flickered in his expression. Not anger. Something else. Understanding, maybe. Or the beginning of it. I got in my car and drove away. The table could stay. I was done eating there. Monday morning, I sat across from my attorney, Michael Torres, in his downtown Seattle office. Between us lay 3 manila folders, each one representing a different kind of betrayal. The IRS moved faster than expected, Michael said, tapping the thickest folder. They're opening a full audit of the LLC. Turns out your mother-in-law hasn't filed taxes on her business income in 4 years. I felt something cold settle in my chest. For years. Trace Richardson was running a scheme, Michael continued. Money came into the LLC from your accounts, got categorized as business expenses, then distributed as cash or payments to vendors that don't exist. Classic money laundering setup. How much trouble is Dorothy in? Federal tax evasion? She's looking at significant fines, possible criminal charges. If they can prove intentional fraud rather than negligence, she could face prison time. The word hung in the air. Prison. Dorothy Kim, 70 years old, who'd immigrated from South Korea 35 years ago and built a life through sheer determination. Who'd also decided I was expendable when it became convenient. What about Melissa? I asked. Michael's expression shifted. That's complicated. She's listed as managing member of the LLC, which makes her legally responsible for its operations. But if she can prove she was manipulated by Richardson, she might avoid criminal charges. She signed documents, I said. She transferred money. She forged my signature on formation papers. All true. But prosecutors often make deals with secondary players to get the primary target. He paused. In this case, Trace Richardson is the architect. Your wife is the tool he used. I thought about Melissa sitting in that coffee shop, crying about not knowing how much money had been taken. Part of me wanted to believe she'd been manipulated. The part that had loved her for 19 years. The other part remembered her voice. This day is for my mother, not for you to embarrass this family. What does she want? I asked. Michael slid a document across the desk. She's proposing a settlement. She signs over her portion of the house, agrees to split custody of Brandon 50-50, and provides full documentation of everything Trace Richardson did. In exchange, you don't pursue criminal charges against her personally. I read through the terms. It was almost generous. Almost fair. What's the catch? She wants you to help with her mother's legal defense. Not financially, but as a character witness. Testify that Dorothy was a victim of Richardson's manipulation too. I set the document down. No, Ryan. No. I repeated. Dorothy wasn't a victim. She orchestrated this. She brought Trace into the family. She held my phone and used it to access my accounts. She sent me that text. Don't come Sunday. Seating is arranged. She knew exactly what was happening. Michael nodded slowly. Then we reject the settlement. Counteroffer, I said. She provides full documentation and testimony against Richardson. She agrees to supervise visitation with Brandon until he's 18. She signs a legal agreement never to request financial assistance from me again. She does all of that, and I won't pursue charges against her. And Dorothy? Dorothy faces whatever consequences her actions earned. Michael made notes. What about Brandon? Have you talked to him? I hadn't. Not since the hospital. But my phone had been buzzing with messages from a number I didn't recognize. Finally, yesterday, I'd answered. Dad, it's me. Using a friend's phone. Mom took mine. I need to talk to you. Brandon. He reached out. I said. We're meeting tomorrow. Be careful, Michael warned. He's still a minor. Anything he says could be used by Melissa's attorney. I know, but he's my son. He deserves to know the truth. Michael closed his folders. For what it's worth, you're handling this better than most people would. I've seen men in your situation make emotional decisions that destroy their legal position. I spent 20 years teaching people to separate emotion from process, I said. Turns out that training applies to divorce too. I left Michael's office and walked to my car. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Mr. Collins, this is Brandon's school counselor. He's asked if you could be added to his emergency contact list. His mother removed you last week. Please call to authorize. I stared at the message. Melissa had removed me from Brandon's emergency contacts. One more small erasure, one more way of writing me out of the family. I called the school and spent 15 minutes on the phone authorizing my reinstatement as Brandon's father, legal guardian, and primary emergency contact. When I hung up, my hand was shaking. Not from anger, from something else. The realization that this wasn't over. That even after everything, Melissa was still trying to control the narrative, still trying to remove me from my son's life. Tomorrow, I'd meet with Brandon, and he'd learn what his mother and grandmother had really been doing, whether he was ready for it or not. Tuesday afternoon, I sat in a Starbucks near Brandon's school, nursing a coffee I didn't want. He'd said he could meet at 3:30, after basketball practice. At 3:40, he walked through the door. 17 years old, tall like me, with his mother's dark hair and my jawline. He looked nervous. I waved him over. He sat across from me, dropping his backpack heavily. "Thanks for coming," he said quietly. "Of course. You're my son." He looked down at the table. "Mom said you're trying to put Grandma in jail." Straight to it, then. No small talk. I could respect that. "I'm not trying to do anything," I said. "I'm protecting myself from people who committed fraud using my identity. If that results in legal consequences for your grandmother, that's because of what she did, not what I'm doing." Brandon's jaw tightened. "She's 70 years old, Dad." "I know. I also know she spent 4 years not paying taxes while funneling money through a company registered in my name. Age doesn't exempt you from consequences." He looked up then, eyes red-rimmed. "Why are you doing this? Why can't you just let it go?" The question hit harder than I expected. I took a breath. "Brandon, do you know how much money was taken from our accounts?" He shook his head. "Over $400,000. For 8 years, your mother and grandmother, with help from Trace Richardson, systematically moved money out of accounts I worked my entire adult life to build. They forged my signature. They created companies in my name. They made me liable for debts I never agreed to." His face went pale. 400,000? Yes. And when I started asking questions, when I started noticing things didn't add up, they removed me from the family table, so I wouldn't interfere. "That's not why," Brandon protested. "Mom said you were making Grandma uncomfortable. By existing," I interrupted. "By being present, or by being close enough to see what they were doing?" He didn't answer. I pulled out my phone and opened a folder. "I'm going to show you something. You're 17, old enough to understand what happened. But once you see this, you can't unsee it." I turned the phone toward him. Bank statements, transaction records, the LLC formation documents with my forged signature. Brandon scrolled slowly, his expression changing. Confusion, disbelief, understanding, anger. "Mom signed these," he said, pointing at the LLC papers. "Yes." "And Grandma knew?" "Yes." He kept scrolling. Stopped at the hospital bill from his appendectomy. The insurance cancellation notice dated 3 days before his collapse. "They canceled my insurance," he whispered. "To save money while they were taking mine," I said quietly. "I restored the next day. You didn't know because I didn't want you to carry that while you were recovering." Brandon set the phone down, his hand shaking. "Why would they do this?" "Because your grandmother's business failed and she was desperate. Because Trace Richardson saw an opportunity to manipulate the situation. And because your mother chose loyalty to her mother over honesty with her husband." Silence stretched between us. Around us, the coffee shop hummed with ordinary life. Students studying, people working on laptops, normal things. "I stood there and told you that you made everything about yourself," Brandon said finally, his voice breaking. "I called you embarrassing. I watched Mom kick you out and I didn't say anything." "You didn't know the truth," I said. "I should have," he replied, tears starting. "I'm your son. I should have trusted you." I reached across the table. He grabbed my hand, holding on like he was drowning. "I'm sorry, Dad. I'm so sorry." "I know," I said, "and I forgive you. You were manipulated just like I was. The difference is, you're still young enough to learn from it." He wiped his eyes with his free hand. "What happens now? Now you make a choice. You're 17, almost 18. In Washington, that's old enough for the court to consider your preference in custody arrangements. Your mother is offering shared custody. I'm willing to accept that. But I need you to understand what that means." "What do you mean?" "It means you'll spend time in a house where the people who lied to both of us still live. Where your grandmother will try to justify what she did. Where your mother will try to make me the villain of this story. Brandon pulled his hand back. Mom's already doing that. She told everyone you abandoned us. That you chose money over family. The irony was so sharp it almost made me laugh. Almost. What do you want to do? I asked. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he pulled out his phone. I'm 18 in 4 months, he said. Can I stay with you until then? Like officially. Your mother would have to agree. What if she doesn't? Then we go to court, and I fight for it. He nodded slowly. Okay, let's do that. I felt something loosen in my chest. Not relief. Not quite. But something close to it. There's something else you should know, I said. I'm going to testify against Trace Richardson. When this goes to trial, I'll be in that courtroom explaining exactly what he did. It might be hard on your mother. On your grandmother. Good, Brandon said, and there was steel in his voice. They should feel hard. I looked at my son. Really looked at him. He'd grown up in the last week. Learned things no 17-year-old should have to learn about the people who were supposed to protect him. I'm proud of you, I said. He looked surprised. Why? I screwed up so bad. Because you're here. Because you asked questions. Because when you saw the truth, you didn't look away. His eyes filled again, but he smiled through it. I learned from the best. We sat there for another hour, talking through logistics, emotions, plans. When we finally left, he hugged me in the parking lot. The first real hug we'd shared in months. I love you, Dad, he said. I love you too, son. He got in his car and drove back to a house that wasn't home anymore. Tomorrow, I'd file the paperwork to modify custody arrangements. But tonight, I'd gotten something back that I thought I'd lost forever. My son's trust. And maybe, eventually, his respect. That was worth more than $400,000 could ever be. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Fluorescent lights. Worn wooden benches. The kind of space where lives got dismantled quietly, bureaucratically. I sat in a gallery, watching Trace Richardson at the defendant's table. His expensive suit couldn't hide the fear in his eyes. Melissa sat 3 rows behind him, flanked by her attorney. She'd signed the immunity agreement 2 weeks ago, trading testimony for freedom. Dorothy sat beside her, face drawn, awaiting her own hearing next month. Brandon sat next to me, silent and watchful. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Andrea Walsh, called me to the stand. I'd been preparing for this moment for weeks with Bill Stevens and Michael Torres. Under oath, I walked through it all. The unauthorized banking access. The forged signatures. The $412,000. The LLC I never created. The loan applications in my name. Trace's attorney tried to rattle me during cross-examination, suggesting I'd been aware of the transactions, that I'd benefited from tax advantages. I didn't waver. I'd spent 20 years teaching people to stay calm under pressure. Mr. Collins, the attorney asked, isn't it true you're doing this out of revenge against your ex-wife? No, I said calmly. I'm doing this because identity theft is a crime. Because $400,000 isn't a misunderstanding, it's systematic theft. The jury's expressions told me everything I needed to know. When I stepped down, Brandon squeezed my shoulder. Melissa looked away. 3 days later, the verdict came back. Guilty on all counts. Trace Richardson faced 8 years in federal prison. Dorothy's hearing followed 2 weeks after. Plea bargain. 3 years probation, full restitution, permanent ban from business registration in Washington state. Melissa and I signed divorce papers on a gray Tuesday morning in March. Shared custody. Clean financial split. No drama. Just signatures and the end of 19 years. That was justice. Cold, procedural, final. 18 months later, I stood in the kitchen of my new condo in Fremont, watching rain streak the windows. Seattle doing what Seattle does best. Brandon walked in from his bedroom, college acceptance letter in hand. University of Washington. Computer science. Full merit scholarship. They came through, he said, grinning. Never doubted it. I replied. He was 18 now, legally an adult, but still my son. We'd rebuilt slowly, carefully. Therapy helped. Honesty helped more. He split time between my place and Melissa's apartment across town, though he spent most weekends here. Melissa had found work as an HR coordinator at a small firm. Modest salary. Modest life. Trace Richardson was 2 years into his sentence. She visited him monthly, or so Brandon said. I didn't ask for details. Dorothy lived in a senior apartment in Renton, her import business long gone, her pride broken. Brandon saw her occasionally. I didn't. My phone buzzed. Bill Stevens recovered another $47,000 from the LLC liquidation. Final distribution. You've got $238,000 back of the original $412,000. Dad, Brandon asked. Good news. Closure, I said. Final money recovered. He nodded. Was it worth it? All the fighting. I thought about the courtroom, the divorce, the 18 months of rebuilding trust. Yes, I said finally. Not because of the money. Because you learned that actions have consequences. That standing up for yourself isn't the same as being vindictive. That family isn't an excuse for abuse. He smiled. I'm glad I chose you. I'm glad you chose honesty, I corrected. That evening, we drove to his favorite restaurant. Just the two of us, like we'd been doing every Thursday for a year. Building new traditions. At dinner, Brandon mentioned that Melissa wanted us all to have dinner together next month. What do you think? I asked. I think we've all learned enough to sit at the same table without anyone getting erased, he said. Smart kid. Going to make a hell of an engineer. I'd lost a wife, a mother-in-law for $100,000, and 19 years of believing people were fundamentally good. But I'd gained something more valuable. A son who understood that respect isn't given by blood. It's earned through integrity. And that was worth everything I'd lost.